Welcome to Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Are you ready to be better within your world and become the standard bearer within your organization or wherever you are? Leaders, aspirants, every one of you, all of us influence our culture, the organization's culture, our workplace's culture through actions taken both inside and outside of the workplace. I founded Ontero Solutions upon integrity, customer satisfaction, and attention to detail, specifically executive coaching and leadership development. Join in for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. Leading by example starts now. So do you ever wonder why our values sometimes seem compromised, whether in the workplace, politics, or even in our personal lives? Why do we see principles sacrificed for quick wins or convenience? These are the kinds of questions we're tackling on this show, Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. Throughout our show, we'll dig deep into the tough issues, offering insights, answers, and most importantly, solutions. Are you ready to explore how we can all lead by example? If so, let's get started. So this November, we're spotlighting and honoring the diverse leadership contributions of two exceptional leaders as we explore the rich landscape of military leadership in our special series titled Forged in Service, Exploring the Many Faces of Military Leadership. For part 2 of this series, I am thrilled to introduce today's special guest, Dr. Terrance Sanders, founder and president of A Father's Legacy, Incorporated. I can assure you, this episode will be both rich and enlightening as Dr. Sanders shares his diverse experiences, including 24 years of distinguished service in the United States Army, where he retired as a lieutenant colonel, and his current role as a senior facilitator at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Dr. Sanders' commitment to ethical leadership was exemplified during his time as chief of the Equal Opportunity Policy Branch at the Pentagon, and through his ongoing mentorship of young men of color. Dr. Sanders also brings a deep understanding of organizational culture, particularly through his nonprofit, A Father's Legacy, which addresses fatherlessness by promoting early involvement of young fathers. I've had the privilege of learning about Dr. Terrance Sanders' incredible journey, and what truly stands out to me is his unwavering commitment to service and mentorship. Whether leading on the battlefield or guiding young men in their personal and professional lives, Dr. Sanders embodies the true essence of leadership. His dedication to fostering positive change, especially through his nonprofit, A Father's Legacy, is deeply inspiring, and I know you'll find it just as moving. Let me give you a little more background on Dr. Sanders before we dive into our conversation. Dr. Terrance J. Sanders is a distinguished leader whose career spans over 2 decades of service and leadership. He served 24 years in the United States Army, rising from private to lieutenant colonel, and culminating his military career as chief of the Equal Opportunity Policy Branch at the Pentagon. His dedicated service during the War on Terrorism earned him 3 Bronze Stars and a Combat Action Badge. Following his military service, Dr. Sanders transitioned to the Department of Veterans Affairs, where he has served as a senior facilitator for over 12 years. He holds a PhD in business psychology and leadership from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and he is deeply committed to ethical leadership and organizational culture. In addition to his military and professional accomplishments, Dr. Sanders founded A Father's Legacy, Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering young fathers to become actively involved in their children's lives. His commitment to community service is evident through his mentorship of young men of color, his work supporting local food banks, and his role as vice president of his community's homeowners association. In all his endeavors, Dr. Sanders embodies a wealth of experience and a deep passion for service. It's truly an honor to have him with us today. With such an impressive background and a commitment to service that extends beyond the military, it's clear that Dr. Sanders' leadership journey is one filled with purpose and impact. To truly understand what drives such dedication, let's begin by looking back to the start of his career. So Dr. Sanders, Can you tell us about your journey in the United States Army and what initially motivated you to join the military?
Well, first, before I begin, what an outstanding introduction. I will tell you, I hope that I can live up to that billing. I endeavor to uh, provide you the necessary information that your audience will need, and that you will continue to grow in your efforts to support those who have a heart for service, and your demonstration of how you are going about doing your work. I applaud you. And so,
Thank
with that being said, what prompted me to join the military and kind of give you a background about my military journey? Well, let's see. What motivated me the most was I needed to pay off my college loan. So
you.
my 4 year degree, or my 4 year of college, extended to 5 years. And so I had to get a loan. And so I joined the military, excuse me, enlisted in order to get the GI Bill and to go back to school with my master's. Secondly, my father was in the military. So in 1953, he joined the Army. And then my brothers were also in the military. I had one in the Army and the other one in the Air Force, and they all retired while I was in college. So while I was finishing up college, I decided to enlist in the military. And looking back at my military career, there were certain things that I wanted to be able to accomplish. And so what I understood from my brothers is that joining the military provided them with the discipline that they needed in order to be successful in the areas of growth for their lives. And I believe that I needed that in my own life. Although college was a means of advancing myself, I still lacked the discipline that allowed me to be more structured in how I wanted to approach whatever it is that I had intended to do for my life.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So I spoke during the introduction about some of the key leadership roles you had. How did they shape your approach to leadership?
Great question. When I think about my role in the military, it all began as a private. And I never knew about uh, what leadership meant until I joined the military, when you're made a section leader and when you're
Mhm.
made a squad leader, and you are responsible for everyone that was in your section and in your squad. So it groomed me very well. So from that aspect, within 2 years, I made E5. So I was a sergeant within 2 years.
Sure.
And upon getting promoted to sergeant, my sergeant major decided to pull me out of my unit and made me his driver. So being the sergeant major driver, it really culminated in me becoming the servant leader that I eventually would be moving forward in my career. And so my journey is really about being a servant leader. And so I
Wonderful.
was honorably discharged after serving 2 years as an enlisted man, joined ROTC, and earned my second lieutenant as an air defense officer. So I
Mm.
became a platoon leader, and then I became a battery XO, and a battery XO for 2 years. And during that time, it really equipped me with the administrative skills, with the discipline, I keep saying that same word, but
Mhm.
the ability to adapt and to have the critical thinking that I needed in order to make sure that the people I was responsible for had all of the information needed to be successful. So being an XO was an extremely great leadership role for me. So from being an XO, I became a battery commander. Now I became a battery commander of an HHB, headquarters and headquarters battery. So
Mhm.
I was responsible for the brigade, excuse me, the battalion commander, the battalion XO, the battalion sergeant major. All of them were in my battery. So
Not fun.
that was a challenge for me, especially being an African American officer. And so I was a battery commander in Korea, in Suwon, which is an Air Force base in Korea. And I had a lot of challenges, but I overcame those challenges through my faith. And where God really began to help me uh, believe in myself, I was able to take all of the information and the documents and all of the doctrine that um, allowed for understanding what my role was. I immersed myself in that, and it allowed me to see how to be a much better and effective and efficient leader as a battery commander. And it didn't hurt to have a brand new first sergeant because
Mm,
the previous first sergeant was not that good.
mm,
But what really helped me was General Ellis. General Ellis at the time was a Black three-star general. He eventually was promoted to a four-star. And he was the first four-star general that graduated from an HBCU, Morgan State University. So he
mm-hmm.
came to our compound and he spoke to the battalion commander, which at the time was Colonel Bromberg. And now he's, retired, but he reached his third star. But General Ellis came to the compound and he pulled me aside. And I felt extremely special to have a three-star take interest in me. And he said, don't worry about it. You're going to be well taken care of. And so after having that uplifting conversation with General Ellis, I received a 1 block for my command as an an HHB commander. And so being in a leadership role as a commander is probably the most proudest and the greatest moment of any Army officer, to have these young soldiers and older soldiers depending on you to lead them. And then that becomes much more of understanding what a true servant leader was. So
Mm-hmm.
after I did my command, I did time, I was an ROTC instructor at the University of Dayton. Then I transitioned to, HR. As an HR officer, I became a adjutant for the brigade that went into Iraq. So I learned a lot of things there. But the job that really made me who I am in understanding what a true servant leader, but what God purposed for my life, is a job that I didn't want, a job that I asked God to take this away from me. And that job was a protocol officer for the division. And
Wow.
so I went into Iraq for the second time. I went the first time as an adjutant. I went the second time as a protocol officer. And the understanding of being a protocol officer is I was responsible for ensuring that all congressional delegates that came into the country were safe, that they had these protection that they need, that they had the best and safe living quarters. So I did a lot of coordinating. I did a lot of collaborating. I did a lot of structuring, and it really has helped me throughout my life today because I am such a planner. And so it gave me this strategic skills that I need that I apply today. And so those were the jobs that helped me to become a successful leader during my military career. And in that particular job, I received a 1 block over S3s and G3s.
Wow.
Yes, that
Yes.
that were strategic officers and
Right.
I officers uh, at the rank of major, and he gave me, or I earned, a 1 block in that role, and I was like, that was nothing but God.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
those are
difficult.
some of the key leadership jobs that kind of molded me into the type of individual and leader that I am now.
Wonderful. So fast forward from your military career, what was the most challenging aspect of transitioning from military service to civilian life?
Wow.
So many parts.
It was the unknown because you become so familiar with the military life, and then
Mhm.
to transition to civilian life, it became an unknown. And it was a little bit unnerving, but I had prepared myself for the transition by, again, as an air defense officer, I knew there was not a job that I could transition to in the civilian sector where I'm shooting down airplanes.
Right.
So
Right.
I had to transition to a job where it was more administrative. So wanting to understand, I had to prepare myself by transitioning to HR and to EO. So I would have a skill set that was um, usable in the civilian sector.
Yeah, I think that's very important, very key what you just mentioned, because I talk to a lot of veterans and that's where they struggle. It's a
Yeah,
tremendous mindset change, just accepting that you need to learn a new skill,
yes,
for a new environment, new peers.
yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, how do you help other veterans navigate the transition and what advice would you give those preparing to transition?
Well, I help veterans. Again, work at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I do a lot of training with a lot of senior leaders. I train senior leaders on in areas of compliance where they fail to comply with the regulations, dealing with treating their employees with dignity and respect. So when there are complaints, my role is to talk to a lot of these leaders because when they transition from the military, they bring that same mindset into the civilian sector. So you can't be as direct with civilians as you were when you were in the military. And so they begin to um, have friction with their employees. And so my job is to go either to the unit and train a host of leaders on the importance of treating each other with dignity and respect, and to ensure that there is civility amongst leaders when it comes to the pyramid of complaints that they have. And when I
Mm.
talk about the pyramids of complaint, it starts at the lower level. But below that area, below the surface area, are some really problems underneath. And those are the problems that I have to address because it begins to have a psychological problem for them. And they don't know that this psychological problem is also having a social problem for their employees being able to do their job. And if an employee is unable to do their job, they're not able to help veterans. So I
Mhm.
have to ensure them that the way that veterans are affected is how they treat their employees and to get everybody in line to ensure the importance of treating each other with dignity and respect.
I
Now,
love it.
when I look at how I could help a veteran, like I stated earlier, I got a I got my degree in human resource management. And after I received my degree in human resource management, I decided to get a job that was in alignment through branch that would help me to understand and get the knowledge and the experience as a human resource officer. So I became an adjutant. After I
Mhm.
became an adjutant, then I wanted to go into the EEO arena. So I became the EO for the division. After doing a great job within the division, I was moved up to the Pentagon to be the chief of EEO. So it's important for veterans to understand that you need to start planning 5 years out
Mhm.
or preparing 5 years out on what you want to do once you decide to retire. Education is the number one thing, or getting some type of certification that will transition into the civilian sector in an area that you have a passion for. If you don't have a passion for, don't get a degree or a certificate in that area.
Mhm.
Once you get that degree, then talk with management or talk with the unit and work in that area. Get all the experience that you need. And once you've gotten all the experience that you need, then start networking, start hunting for jobs, start applying for jobs. And so when the transition comes, you are not having a culture shock. Now you're having to deal with the dichotomy of what do I do now that I am out of the military and have to figure out for myself and for my family how to provide for them.
Right, right. So, Dr. Sanders, your time in the military clearly shaped your leadership style and left a
Absolutely.
lasting impact. But what's equally inspiring is how you've carried that leadership forward into civilian life. So, let's explore how your military experience has influenced your work in the community and beyond. How did your military training prepare you for the challenges of civilian leadership, and what skills have been most useful in your post-military roles?
Well, I would have to say I encompass the values of the Army when it comes to leadership, because that acronym within the Army of leadership deals with LDRSHIP,
Mhm.
loyalty. So in my military career, I was loyal to the Army, and I swore oath. Now in my civilian job and in my nonprofit, I am dedicated to the purpose of what I do. And I always, and this is just me, I work towards being the subject matter expert in everything that I do.
Mhm.
And you are the same way.
Exactly.
So it is that drive in me to be the SME in everything that I do. So I am dedicated and loyal to those particular areas. Also, when I think about the other aspect of leadership is my duty. I have been given an opportunity to serve senior executives, senior leaders, directors, and try to ensure them the importance of their roles and their duties to treat their employees with dignity and respect. Then you have the other aspect of the civilian life is being selfless. I've always been selfless. I've always been a person, again, a servant leader, which means I think about others and I try to get them involved, get their input because it allows for them to have buy-in to what that direction that I intend to go. And I honor them, which is also a part of leadership, because my life is based on being a Christian and the values of loving God. And I
Mhm.
want to make sure that that is demonstrated in the way that I operate, not only in my job, because I want them to know that I'm professional and I'm dedicated, because as a employee with the Department of Veterans Affairs, I don't represent myself. I represent the Department of Veterans Affairs and the people that I serve. So I am always professional because of that brand. The same way I feel about my nonprofit, that brand is the brand that represents the importance of doing the job that he has given me. And then integrity, living a life of honesty, living a life of truthfulness to making sure that those that I come in contact with are able to rely on me. And then lastly is my personal courage or perseverance, because I know in life I'm going to deal with some adversity and
Mhm.
making sure that I stay faithful, stay focused, and follow through with everything that I've been given.
Awesome. I love it all. So, audience, as you listen to Dr. Sanders' story, think about how leadership has played a role in your own life and what lessons can you apply in your community or workplace. So, Dr. Sanders, while your post military leadership in the community is remarkable, another important aspect of your work is your dedication to supporting veterans and mentoring the next generation of leaders. Veteran advocacy plays a critical role in helping those who have served transition to civilian life and thrive beyond their military careers. What initiatives or programs do you believe are most effective in supporting veterans' well being, and how has mentorship shaped your own leadership journey?
Mentorship has been important, but go back to your first question. There are so many initiatives that are available to our veterans, and I don't know if they are aware of a lot of those alternate agencies that they could tap into. So there's a veterans crisis hotline where veterans, if they are in a crisis or dealing with some type of trauma, they can contact them, and it's 24/7. There's also the telehealth and therapy that a lot of these veterans can get assistance that are throughout various areas for mental health professionals that can assist them. There's other programs called Onward to Opportunities that can help them transition educationally. It's called the O2O, which it provides career training for veterans. And there are so many other different programs. There are veteran-owned businesses, small businesses that give them loans and grants and entrepreneurship programs that offers training and mentorship for veterans, and so many hiring initiatives. So it's important for veterans to tap into those so that way they can bridge that gap between once they retire, they are not worried about what they're going to be doing in their next chapter of their lives, and to always consider education. There are apprenticeships within the military that allows them to move forward. There are family network programs that allow them and their families to get opportunities for jobs. And so many opportunities for them to move forward. But when it came to mentorship for myself, again, General Ellis was huge in my earlier part of my career. And then when I didn't know how to prepare for the next chapter, while I was in Iraq, I had two great mentors, an all white, Colonel Birch. And my wife calls Colonel Birch my daddy. And I will tell you, Colonel Birch was the meanest person that I have ever had the chance to work with. But when he knew you and he wanted to help you, he ensured that he took care of you. And he would curse people out, but he got things. I mean, it didn't matter what color, it didn't matter what age, he would curse you out and you would feel so small. And I've had that experience with him. But once he began to know me a lot better, our relationship grew. And so from Colonel Birch to General Webster, my boss, while I was a protocol officer, helped guide me to my next career because I didn't know exactly the directions that I wanted to go. And they allowed me to be the division EO, and then they helped me to get the position at the Pentagon. So great mentors during the last part of my career.
Absolutely. So Dr. Sanders, in addition to your work with veterans and mentorship, one of the most impactful ways you've continued to lead is through your nonprofit organization, A Father's Legacy Incorporated. The mission of this organization speaks directly to your dedication to empowering young fathers and strengthening families. Can you share what inspired you to start A Father's Legacy and what is the primary mission driving the organization today?
What prompted me to start A Father's Legacy, I had thought about doing a program, and I had read something about a father's place, and I thought that was pretty unique. However, as I was getting my doctorate in business, I had to do a study on nonprofits. And as I was reading through the requirements needed to start a nonprofit, I said I would never, ever do a nonprofit. So once I graduated, I decided to take up teaching. I wanted to be an adjunct, so I started applying at different colleges. And I heard a voice that told me, I need you to be a substitute teacher at an elementary school, high school, and middle school. I was like, no, I have a PhD. So I am not going to go and teach at a middle school and substitute. Yes, you are. So fast forward, I go to the middle school. I learned that a lot of these kids with behavior problems don't have fathers. And that broke me. And I said, I need to do something because I had one student that cursed me out my first day. The second
Mm.
day, yeah, just completely floored me. And even when I tried to assist him by giving him correction, because I understand my background is military and I'm a leader and I'm not used to someone talking to me in that manner. So I had to go into a different depth of my own natural self to reserve the spiritual side of me to come forward and handle that situation. So fast forward, dealing with that issue and dealing with young men, young kids telling me that they miss their dad. And what really broke me down was the third day that I did substitute teaching. A young girl walks up to me, had never seen me before, puts her arms, just walked straight up to me, put her arms around me and said, I love you. And I'm,
Oh,
what? So she sits down. Within 5 minutes of sitting down, she drew me a card and said, I love you. You are the best substitute teacher ever. So that made me understand that there's something missing in her life,
mm-hmm.
a male figure that she saw in me that she wanted to have. And she wanted to show me how much she needed. So I was like, I see your vision, God.
Mm-hmm.
I see the mission. And so that's where our father legacy really stemmed from. And it
Okay.
inspired me.
So how does the nonprofit support and empower fathers in the community?
So what we do is we allow young fathers to come into our program and we train them on how to have healthy relationship, how to be a responsible parent, and most importantly, financial literacy. That is so important. I had the opportunity to do a fatherhood training in Washington, D.C. with parolees. And one of the things that was so devastating to me is to see these fathers that are on parole still out there selling drugs
Mm-mm.
and not getting a job because that's the lifestyle that they're used to, because they have to put food on their table. They have to pay
Yeah.
for it. Even though they have the ankle bracelet on, they come and tell me, I don't have any other. I said, yes, you do. And so it's important for me to tell them that they still have potential. And when you show them love and you give them mentorship, then they can believe that they can move beyond just what they've seen their friends do or their parents do, which is also alarming to see them come from a family that this generational cycle has
Mm-hmm.
caused them to continue that same cycle.
Wow. So with that, what specific programs or initiatives within a father's legacy could benefit from additional resources or volunteer support?
So where we are looking for assistance is now strategically, I do things in four phases. Phase one is assessment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to see what the community need, and I've done that. Did a survey where they believe that there is a problem with absentee fathers. So I am at this particular point doing some training with the secondary school counselors within each of the public schools, Spotsylvania, Stafford, and Fredericksburg. I've met with all the superintendents. I informed them of the program. Community programs are inviting me into teach fatherhood training. So this effort right now is seeing that there is a need. The second part of it, the effort, is development. And that effort, that phase is I have the programs in place. I just need the opportunity to bring in the young fathers so I can start administering the program, which is a curriculum. The
Mm-hmm.
curriculum is an evidence-based curriculum developed by the National Fatherhood Institute. It's an initiative that teaches you experiential training on fatherhood, responsible parenting, and the essence of being a nurturing father. And so those lessons allow me to teach these young men, and then they'll give them the resources on dealing with pregnancy, dealing with childhood, dealing with child rearing, because those things were never addressed for fathers. They are always giving programs for women. And it's important for these fathers to be fully invested in everything that their significant other, their partner is going through. And so that they're an understanding of why this becomes their legacy and they need to be there at the earlier stages.
I love it. So, what long-term impact do you hope a father's legacy will have on families and communities?
What I'm hoping is fathers remain with their children. And what we have seen so many times is the negativity about absentee fathers. And yes, there are some fathers that are absent, but there are some fathers that are doing great jobs taking care of their kids. And that message doesn't get out as much. And so I want to create a paradigm shift. And every time I see a father, I want to applaud them and tell them, I recognize what you do. And so what I'm hoping that one, they stay with their children, they create that lasting relationship. Two, I'm hoping that they graduate from high school. And once they graduate from high school, I am hoping to push them towards the three E's. The three E's of either enlistment, education, or employment. And that is where we work with them so they can transition to being able to afford the necessary means of taking care of not only themselves, but their children and their family. And what we want to do is to reduce the amount of school absences and school dropouts and deviant behavior that cause them to drink and substance abuse. So we want to mentor them. So that is what we are trying to accomplish.
Wonderful. That is truly God's work.
Thank you.
Are there any upcoming events, fundraisers, or programs that the audience should know about and support?
So we're having a giving campaign. You can go to the website. It's called Reclaiming Fatherhood. And just by simply clicking on donations or donate, it will lead you straight to the website. Next year, I have scheduled a fatherhood fun run, which will be at Pratt Park. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm doing a lot of speaking events at within the community, secondary school counselors. Just so you know, they're no longer known as guidance counselors. So that's a bad word. So make sure you call them secondary school counselors.
Secondary school counselors.
Yes.
Vernacular.
Yeah. And then you don't call them parolees, they are called returned citizens.
Yeah, I learned it the hard way by somebody. Don't call me that.
So it's been such a wonderful journey, learning so many different things about what he wants me to do and giving me the experience to be able to execute that strategically.
Awesome. I love it. And, I've always, believed that, our achievements are, for kingdom use. They're not for us to be boastful.
Absolutely.
It's for us to get out here and, solve real world problems with the talents that we've been blessed with.
Absolutely.
So I applaud you, Dr. Sanders, and we cannot thank you enough for joining us today and sharing your incredible journey. Your dedication to leadership, both in your military service and beyond, is truly inspiring. From your commitment to ethical leadership and organizational culture to your impactful work with A Father's Legacy, your insights have enriched our conversation and our listeners' understanding of what it means to lead with integrity and compassion. Your efforts to mentor young men, support fathers, and serve your community remind us of the powerful impact one person can have. It has been an honor to hear your story and learn from your experiences. We are deeply grateful for the time you spent with us today and for the lasting contributions you continue to make in so many areas of life. So thank you again, Dr. Sanders, for sharing your wisdom and for continued service to others. As we wrap up today's episode, we're reminded of the power of leadership rooted in integrity, compassion, and service. Dr. Sanders' journey demonstrates that true leadership extends beyond titles and roles. It's about positively influencing the lives of others, whether through mentoring, community service, or advocating for the next generation. His work is a testament to the impact that one person can make when they lead with purpose. Let today's conversation inspire us all to embrace leadership in our own lives and make a difference wherever we can. And with that, We come to the end of today's episode. It's been a privilege to have such an enriching conversation with Dr. Terrance Sanders, who is a true example of leadership, service, and dedication to both his country and his community. His experiences remind us of the importance of ethical leadership and the incredible impact, again, that one person, all it takes is one person, you do what you can do and trust God to do the rest. We hope that today's discussion has inspired you to think about how leadership shows up in your own life and how we can all contribute to building stronger, more compassionate communities, whether it's in our own personal relationships, our workplaces, or through community service. We each have the power to lead and create lasting positive change. Thank you again to our guest, Dr. Sanders, and to all of our listeners for tuning in. As we close today's episode, we invite you to take the lessons of leadership and service shared by Dr. Terrance Sanders and apply them in your own life. Think about how you can make a difference, whether it's mentoring someone in your community or supporting a cause close to your heart, or simply leading by example in your everyday interactions with others. If Dr. Sanders' mission with a father's legacy resonates with you, consider supporting or getting involved with his organization, which works to empower young fathers and strengthen families. You can learn more by visiting afatherslegacyinc.org. Again, that's afatherslegacyinc.org. And remember, leadership isn't just a position, it's a practice. Let today's conversation be a catalyst for you to take action and become a better leader in your own way. Thank you for listening, and let's continue to build a better and more compassionate world together. Big thank yous to my producer, Ms. Moxie Rogers, for keeping us on target. Please tune in for a new series titled Fostering Fearlessness, Building Courage to Uphold Standards on Thursday, December 5th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The episode is titled The Anatomy of Courage and Leadership. This series will dissect the concept of courage and leadership, offering actionable insights on how leaders can not only act bravely themselves, but also inspire and enable their teams to adhere to high standards, regardless of external pressures. I want to leave you with a quote, and I think Dr. Sanders will appreciate this. The measure of a leader is not the number of people who serve him, but the number of people he serves. That's by John Maxwell. This is Dr. Vaughn signing out. Have a good evening. You have been listening to Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, bringing you inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. As we go through and learn these lessons, I would ask you to be thinking about those lessons that you bring that you could share for potential, hey, you may even want to be a guest on our show. So think about those lessons as we continue to explore inspiring excellence one lesson at a time. For more information, please visit www.enterosolutions.com. That's ENTERO.